The café was chaos. Steam hissed from the espresso machine, phones buzzed, shoes scraped against the tiled floor, 100 lives colliding before the clock struck 9. The smell of burnt coffee clung to the air, sharp and bitter. And in the middle of it all, Maya tried to breathe. Her apron was stained, her hands shaking as she balanced a tray of cappuccinos. One wrong tilt, and it happened. A crash. Porcelain hit the floor, splintering into white shards that scattered like guilt. Coffee splashed across the counter, soaking napkins and someone's designer coat. The cafe froze for half a second. Then came the voice, her manager's, loud enough to slice through the chatter. "Maya, for God's sake, that's the 3rd time this week." Heads turned. Whispered judgment rolled through the room. Her throat tightened. She muttered an apology, bending to clean the mess, ignoring the sting in her wrist from the hot spill. Rent was due in 2 days. Her mother's hospital bill sat unopened on the kitchen table, mocking her every morning. She couldn't afford another mistake, not now, not ever. The world pressed in, the noise, the shame, the exhaustion. And then, just as her shaking hand reached for a shard of porcelain, silence. A man had entered. He didn't belong there, not among the caffeine-deprived crowd and fluorescent lights. He walked with the kind of stillness that demanded space. A simple black coat, gray scarf, no jewelry, no logo, yet everything about him whispered control. Even the barista stopped mid-order as if gravity shifted to make room for him. Lucas Hale. He didn't introduce himself. He never had to. To most of the world, he was just another customer passing through. But to those who knew, or rather used to know, his name carried weight heavier than gold. Hale Dynamics. Billion-dollar empire. The company that had laid off hundreds last winter after a mysterious financial breach, including Maya's brother. And yet, here he was, disguised in ordinary clothes, his watch tucked beneath his sleeve, eyes dark with the kind of focus that stripped people bare without a word. He moved to the counter quiet as a secret. "Black coffee," he said, his voice low, smooth, deliberate. "No sugar." Maya froze. That voice. That name. She'd seen his picture once, in an article her brother couldn't finish reading before he smashed the laptop shut. "The man who ruined us," her brother had said. Her pulse quickened. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the cup. The machine hissed again, a whispering mockery of calm. Behind her, her manager barked something she didn't hear, because all she could feel was the weight of Lucas Hale's gaze. Steady, unflinching, and strangely unreadable. He didn't recognize her. Why would he? To him, she was just another tired face behind a counter, but to her, he was the man standing on the ruins of everything she'd ever loved. She slid his cup across the counter. Her hand brushed his, a spark, unintentional, electric. His fingers were cold, controlled, and for the briefest second his mask cracked. A flicker of something, weariness, maybe guilt, shadowed his expression before he took the cup and turned toward the window. She watched him. He didn't check his phone, didn't look around. He just stood there, sipping coffee that smelled like burnt secrets and sleepless nights. And then she did something reckless. Something that would change everything. From the notepad in her pocket, the one she used for orders, she tore a small square of paper. Her hand shook as she wrote. Not a number, not a thank you, just 5 words. 5 words that would stop him cold. She slipped the note under his cup, so quietly that even the air held its breath. And as she walked away, her heart raced like it already knew what she'd just done couldn't be undone. Before we uncover the note that changed everything, let us know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe to True Crime Archives Because here, power hides secrets, and every cup of coffee can hold a confession. The cafe hummed with low conversation, but around Lucas Hale, the noise thinned, like even sound knew better than to linger too close. He took a seat by the window, a place drenched in gray light that softened nothing. Outside, rain traced crooked lines down the glass, distorting the city into smudges of motion and color. Inside, he sat perfectly still, a man carved out of control and distance. He stirred the black coffee once, not to mix it, but to think. His reflection in the window looked like someone else. Less the billionaire, more the ghost of one. He hadn't slept. Not properly. Not since the board betrayal. Not since someone inside his empire had stolen everything he'd built from the ground up. So he'd gone undercover, to listen, to watch, to catch the whispers people never dared to speak in boardrooms. And now, as he sat in this small cafe surrounded by ordinary lives, he noticed her. The waitress from earlier, the one with trembling hands and eyes that carried exhaustion like a badge of survival. Maya moved carefully this time, shoulders tight, focus absolute. She didn't want another mistake. Her fingers were still red from the hot coffee spill. Her hair had come loose from its tie, curling against her cheek. She tried to steady her breath before she reached him. When she set the cup before him, their eyes met. His, cold and assessing. Hers, lit with the faint glow of someone who's been through too much and still stands. "Thank you, Maya," he said. She froze. Her name hadn't left her lips. Not once. For a split second, her mind ran through possibilities. Had he overheard someone say it? Had she served him before? But no. There was something deliberate about the way he said it. Calm, controlled. A knowing that didn't belong. Her throat went dry. How did you... He lifted his gaze from the cup, expression unreadable. Then, lightly, almost amused, he nodded toward her chest. "Name tag," he said. Her eyes flicked down. The tag was pinned crooked, barely visible beneath a coffee stain. Still, he noticed. Of course he did. Men like him always noticed the details no one else saw. He smiled then, a slow, deliberate curve that didn't quite reach his eyes. The kind of smile that wasn't meant to reassure, but to unsettle. Power in human form, wearing warmth like a disguise. She murmured a quick thank you, stepping back, wanting to put space between them. But his hand moved. Quick, smooth, confident. A crisp $100 bill slid across the table. For a $5 drink. "Keep the change," he said softly. Her instinct was to refuse. "Sir, that's..." But the word caught, because his gaze locked with hers again, holding her there, and she understood. This wasn't charity. It wasn't even kindness. It was something else. Something heavier. She forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach her own eyes either, and took the bill. The paper trembled between her fingers. Lucas watched her walk away. Every movement she made was deliberate, as if she'd learned to hide pain behind precision. And yet, there was a crack in her composure, a flicker of rebellion that caught his attention more than her beauty ever could. He turned his focus back to the note under his cup, the one she thought he hadn't noticed. The handwriting was small, almost hesitant, but the words burned clean through the paper. He didn't die in the fire. For a moment, the mask slipped. His fingers tightened on the cup. The world outside blurred. And inside that ordinary cafe, the billionaire no one recognized felt something dangerous stir. An old memory, buried under ash and money, clawing its way back. He took a slow breath, steadying himself, then looked back toward the counter. Maya was watching him. Her expression gave nothing away, but the way she held herself, The stillness, the waiting, told him she knew exactly what she'd just done. He smiled again, this time almost real. Power wore a smile that morning, but beneath it, something darker began to move. The cafe clock ticked louder than it should have, marking the second since she'd slipped that note beneath his cup. Maya wiped the counter mechanically, pretending not to notice that he hadn't left yet. But her mind wouldn't still. He didn't die in the fire. She'd written it. Yes, but why had she written it for him? What part of her believed Lucas Hale, the man who could buy her world twice over, would understand the danger behind those words? Then his voice broke through the low chatter, deep and even, as if nothing could shake it. He was on the phone, his tone clipped, controlled. I said, trace every transfer. I want names. And if there's another leak, I'll bury the whole department with it. A pause, then lower, darker. People don't even know who they're serving anymore. Maya froze mid-motion, her pulse a quick staccato beneath her ribs. That voice. It wasn't a threat, it was a warning. The kind that comes from someone used to obedience. She slipped out the back door into the rain, air cold against her flushed skin. The downpour had eased into a steady drizzle, soft enough to blur the city lights but not her thoughts. She needed distance, just a few breaths between her and whatever she'd stirred awake. But he was already there. Lucas leaned against the brick wall, jacket collar turned up, watching the rain slide down his sleeve. The city seemed to bend around him, every light, every shadow. He didn't look surprised to see her. You've got sharp ears, he said quietly without turning. Maya froze halfway to the alley's edge. I wasn't. He glanced over his shoulder, eyes reflecting the faint gold of a street lamp. You were, he said simply. Don't apologize for it. Something in the way he said it, calm, almost curious, pulled her closer before she meant to move. He studied her the way one studies a puzzle piece that almost fits. Ever thought of working somewhere better than this? She blinked, caught off guard. Better than minimum wage and wet shoes. Every day. A small smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. Good, then let's make it happen. He reached into his coat and pulled out a slim, matte black card. The letters on it shimmered faintly in the rain. Hale Dynamics. I need an assistant, he said. Just for the day. You'll be paid more than this place gives you in a month. Her breath hitched. Why me? His gaze dropped briefly to her hands. Because you notice things, and because you're not afraid to act when it matters. Maya stared at the card, its edges slick with rain. It felt too heavy for something so thin. She could almost see her reflection in the sheen, eyes tired, scared, but still burning. I don't even know who you really are, she whispered. He handed her a folded document, short, just one page. Then don't ask, just sign. Her eyes scanned the words, non-disclosure agreement, one-day engagement. Then a line, bold and simple, no questions, only honesty. Is this legal? She asked, half laughing, half nervous. Everything worth doing starts a little illegal, he replied, voice low. Thunder rumbled in the distance, rolling across the skyline like a warning. She hesitated. Her rent was due in 2 days. Her mother's hospital bills waited like open jaws. Whatever this was, she needed the money more than she needed safety. Maya exhaled slowly, pressing the pen to paper. The rain smudged the ink, bleeding it just enough to make her name look ghostly. When she handed it back, his gloved fingers brushed hers, briefly, deliberately. Heat sparked like static, quick and quiet but impossible to ignore. Welcome to my world, he said. In the flash of lightning that followed, she saw it. The faint scar running along his jaw, half hidden by shadow. The kind of mark that doesn't come from accidents, but from survival. Something in her chest twisted, and just like that, the air changed. The rain fell harder, the world tilted, and a silent agreement passed between them. Two people caught in a storm, much larger than either could see. The contract was signed, not in trust, not in faith, but in the raw currency of survival. And though neither of them knew it yet, this simple exchange, sealed in rain and silence, had just bound their fates tighter than any ink ever could. The night had turned violent. Rain came down in sheets, hammering the glass of the café like it was trying to get in. Inside, the world was quieter, muted, almost reverent. The smell of burnt espresso lingered in the air, the lights flickering against the storm. Lucas returned alone. No security, no entourage, just a man walking through the storm like it owed him something. His coat was soaked through, the collar turned up, his hair slicked back by the downpour. He didn't bother shaking off the rain. He simply moved to the same corner table by the window, the same place he'd watched her from that morning. Maya saw him before he spoke. Her shift was almost over, her apron stained and her body heavy with exhaustion. But when she looked up and saw him standing there, something inside her straightened. He looked different now, not the untouchable billionaire. Not the man who smiled with his eyes closed. He looked exposed. She poured the coffee herself this time. Black. No sugar, just the way he'd ordered it before. Her hands didn't shake, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she'd already decided what she had to do. When she placed the cup before him, her eyes didn't meet his. Instead, her fingers brushed the edge of the saucer, slow, deliberate, and left behind a folded note. Small enough to go unnoticed, bold enough to change everything. Lucas barely glanced at it. Not at first. He was too busy pretending nothing was wrong, too practiced in the art of calm. But the moment she turned to walk away, he saw the tremor in her hand, the kind that doesn't come from nerves but from urgency, from truth. He lifted the cup. Beneath it, the paper waited. A simple piece of white napkin, folded twice, pressed flat from her palm. He unfolded it carefully, his pulse already beginning to climb, a faint buzz rising in his ears. 4 words, scrawled in rushed, uneven handwriting. You're not safe. They know who you really are. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Lucas's eyes tracked the letters again, as if repetition might change their meaning. The storm outside crashed harder, thunder rolling low across the sky. He glanced up, scanning the room, every corner, every shadow, every patron. No one looked back, but he knew the threat wasn't abstract anymore. Someone inside his company, someone close, had connected the dots. His cover was gone. He folded the note once more, hiding it beneath his hand. His breathing was steady, but his heartbeat was a drum against his ribs, measured panic disguised as composure. He turned his head slightly, just enough to catch Maya's reflection in the window. She was behind the counter pretending to wipe it down, but her eyes were fixed on him. He didn't move for a long moment. Neither did she. Between them, the air felt sharp, like a secret hanging by a thread. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but clear. "When did you see it?" She didn't answer, not with words. Her gaze flicked once toward the back door, then back to him. A warning, a direction, a choice. He rose slowly, his chair scraping the tile, a sound that seemed to cut through every other noise in the café. The other customers kept talking, unaware that something inside that small room had just tilted. As he passed her, he paused. His voice barely a whisper. "Who told you?" Her reply was a whisper too, trembling but sure. Does it matter? It did, but not now. He slipped out into the rain, the note clenched in his fist. The storm swallowed him whole, thunder masking his footsteps. Behind him, Maya stood frozen, heart racing, watching the man she'd just warned vanish into the chaos outside. In that instant, their lives intertwined, not by fate, but by a secret that could destroy them both. The billionaire and the waitress, the hunter and the hidden. The storm raged louder, and somewhere deep in the city, an unseen enemy smiled. The café had gone dark. Chairs stacked, lights off. Only the faint neon from the liquor store across the street spilled through the window, cutting thin blue stripes across the floor. Maya locked the front door, her hands shaking harder than she wanted to admit. The rain outside hadn't stopped. It came down heavier now, drumming against the awning, drowning the city in static. When she turned, he was there. Lucas stood by the counter, shadowed, his shirt damp from the storm. He hadn't left. He'd been waiting. "Who told you?" His voice was quiet, but the quiet kind that feels dangerous, coiled, restrained. The kind that hides a storm behind every word. She froze where she stood. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice unsteady. "I asked you a question." He stepped closer, slow and deliberate. The distance between them evaporated. "Who told you?" Her throat tightened. She could smell the rain on him, the faint metallic scent of adrenaline. He wasn't calm anymore. The control was cracking. She took a step back, bumping against a chair. "Your men came here yesterday." Her voice broke once, then steadied. "They were looking for you, and for me." His brow furrowed. "My men?" "They said they worked for you, hailed Dynamics. They asked if I'd seen you, and when I said no, they started asking about my brother." That made him stop, just for a second. The kind of stillness that says, "I know that name." "What about him?" he asked quietly. She swallowed hard, the words burning her throat on their way out. "He worked for your company. 2 years ago, he was in data analysis. One night he called me, terrified. He said he'd found something that could destroy people at the top. The next morning he was gone. The air between them thickened. She could hear her own pulse, the rain, the hum of the broken light above them. I thought he ran," she said. "Until your men showed up asking questions they already knew the answers to." Lucas's expression didn't move, but something in his eyes flickered. Regret? Guilt? It was gone too fast to tell. "You think I killed him?" he asked finally. The words sounded almost gentle. Too gentle. "Did you?" Silence. It wasn't the kind that meant no. It was the kind that said there's more than you can handle. He looked at her, and for the first time that day the power in him faltered. His composure slipped just enough for her to see the man behind the mask, the one who hadn't slept, who carried too many ghosts. Her breath caught. "Tell me the truth," she whispered. He didn't get the chance. A car screeched outside, tires slicing through puddles. Headlights flashed against the window, then gunfire. Glass exploded. The sound was deafening. Maya screamed as Lucas grabbed her, pulling her down behind the counter. Bullets tore through the café, splintering the wood, shattering cups, sending sparks from the metal espresso machine. "Stay down!" he barked, shielding her with his body. She could feel his heartbeat through his chest, fast, hard, desperate, the smell of gunpowder mixed with rain and fear. "Who are they?" she gasped. "Not my men," he hissed. "Someone else." He reached for something under his coat. A small black pistol, slick with rainwater. His hands were steady now. The billionaire mask was gone. What crouched beside her was something colder, sharper. When the shots stopped, the silence hit harder than the noise. He rose slightly, scanning the shattered glass, the rain-slick street beyond. The car was gone, just taillights vanishing into the dark. Maya's breath came in ragged bursts. "They were trying to kill you." "No," he said, eyes still on the street. "They were trying to kill both of us." He turned to her. His face was different now. No polish, no charm. Just raw intensity and something close to fear. "You shouldn't have written that note," he said quietly. "You shouldn't have lied," she shot back. He almost smiled then, just barely. "You have no idea what you've stepped into." The storm outside raged on, but it couldn't drown the silence that followed. Two strangers, one truth, a dead brother, a company full of secrets, and somewhere in the city, a new target list being rewritten with both their names now on it. They moved through the city like ghosts, two soaked outlines slipping past shuttered storefronts until they found the warehouse, a cavern of shadow and rust that smelled of oil and old paper. Inside, the rain was a distant percussion, dulled by corrugated metal and broken panes. It felt like hiding beneath the ribs of the world. Lucas lowered Maya onto a stack of wooden crates with a gentleness that contradicted the hard set of his jaw. Her hand was bandaged roughly with a torn napkin. The cut from the shattered glass was angry and red. He worked without ceremony, fingers steady as if he'd done this a dozen times before, wiping blood away with the efficiency of a man who'd learned to make order out of chaos. She watched him by the glow of a single dangling bulb, how his face softened when he smoothed the cloth, how the lines around his eyes deepened when he paused. In that small, ordinary motion, she saw a man who had traded sleep for calculation, who had memorized the architecture of other people's secrets and lost the map to his own heart. "Your brother was right," he said abruptly, the words coming out low and even. They landed between them like a confession. About the transfers, about the shell companies, he found how deep it ran. She flinched. She had spent years speaking his name into the dark, half hating the way it tasted in her mouth. Hearing him say her brother's name with something like regret slashed at her. Rage rose first, hot and immediate, the kind that made her muscles tense and her breath quick. But beneath it, more dangerous and unfamiliar, a hollow opened. The ache of someone who misses a life that never had a chance to finish. He met her eyes, and for a moment the billionaire vanished. In its place stood a man who had spent his life building on foundationless faith, on numbers and contracts and people who would bend and break if given the chance. "He wasn't supposed to die," Lucas repeated, softer this time. "He called me. He told me what he'd found. I told him to run. I told him I'd protect him. I failed." Maya's hands curled in her lap. A laugh she didn't intend escaped her, short, stunned. "You told him to run," she echoed, disbelief and accusation braided together. "You built this empire. You had the means to protect him." His shoulders slumped as though a weight had finally been set down. "I thought I could control it. I thought money meant safety. I thought God. I thought if I kept everything close, nothing could touch the people I cared about." He closed his eyes and the warehouse seemed to tilt. "Everything I built came from a lie." She heard it then. Not a billionaire's speech, but the raw admission of a man stripped of pretense. The words were small, dangerous. "Maybe it's time I burn it down," he said, voice breaking on the last syllable like a man testing whether the truth could sustain itself. The image sat between them, violent, impossible, honest. Maya pictured headlines, lawsuits, reputations dissolved in smoke. She pictured her mother's bills paid without strings, a name cleared, a brother's memory honored. She also pictured chaos, livelihoods ruined, innocent people caught in the crossfire of an empire unmade. The cost of his redemption might be a ledger of other people's ruin. "You want to destroy what feeds 1,000 lives because it killed one," she whispered. The accusation was quieter than she felt. It trembled with the terrible arithmetic of justice. He looked at her, and the light from the bulb cut hard across his face. There was no arrogance in him now, only fatigue, and a kind of clarity that made his features seem too honest for his fortune. "Maybe some things have to be destroyed," he said, "not for vengeance, for truth, for a chance at something that isn't built on corpses." A silence followed, heavy, not empty. Outside, the rain changed cadence, slow and steady as if the city held its breath. Maya felt the decision settle in her chest, with the weight of a coin dropped into deep water. She could walk away and let the storm break over someone else. She could hand him the pen and watch him sign away an empire. Or she could stay and become part of that fire, complicit, necessary, terrified. She tasted the choice like ash. Her anger softened into something more complicated, the beginnings of understanding, threaded with suspicion. Her throat tightened. "If you do this," she said, voice low and steady, "you don't get to call it redemption and expect the world to embrace you. People will want blood. Some of them will be innocent." Lucas's eyes glinted with a fierce, tired light. "Then let them want blood," he said. "Let me be the one they take it from." She wanted to see defiance in him. She wanted to see a man ready to become the villain if it meant atoning for what he'd lost. But what she saw was a fracture that ran deeper. Someone who'd finally decided the ledger of his life wasn't worth balancing on more bones. Maya exhaled and, for the first time since the shattered cup, allowed herself to let a small piece of the anger fall away. She folded her bandaged hand over her other, feeling the pulse beneath. "Then you'll need people who can survive the burn," she said. "People who know how to hide in the smoke and keep going." His answering look was almost shy. "I chose you because you don't run," he murmured. "You stand and fix what's broken." The truth between them shifted. Less accusation now, more a fragile pact. Outside, the city raged on, indifferent to their choices. Inside, two lives that had been strangers a day ago tilted toward a single, dangerous horizon. This was no neat redemption. It would be messy and violent and wrong in 1,000 ways, but it would be real. And in that warehouse, under a naked bulb, Maya found the first stubborn ember of something she couldn't yet name. A reason to stay. The night had weight, like the air itself held its breath, waiting for something to end or begin. Lucas sat in the dim light of his penthouse office, the city below flickering in fragmented reflections across the glass. His empire, steel, glass, and silence, stretched beneath him, but for the first time it felt hollow. Every building, every signature, every dollar earned had been bought with something he could never regain. Innocence. He pressed send. The encrypted files carrying every secret Hale Dynamics had buried were now public. Board members, investors, allies, none would survive the fallout. Not even him. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was consequence. Across the room, Maya watched. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the shock of witnessing power surrender itself. The man who once held entire markets in his grasp now sat utterly still, his tie loose, his breath shallow. His control, the thing that had defined him, was gone. What remained was raw, almost human. "You could have walked away," she whispered. "You could have kept everything." He looked up, his eyes faintly lit by the city's glow. "And keep what? More ghosts? More lies? He reached for a document on the desk, a transfer confirmation. "It's done. The foundation's live. Your brother's name. It'll mean something again." Maya stepped closer. The paper trembled in her fingers as she read. Millions, redirected to protect truth-tellers, people like her brother who dared to expose what others buried. Her throat tightened. "You didn't have to—" "I did," he cut in softly. "He died because of me. This won't bring him back, but maybe it stops another life from being lost." His voice cracked just enough for her to hear what he never said aloud, the exhaustion of guilt, the quiet wish that he could undo the past. For a long moment neither spoke. Rain slid down the glass in streaks of silver, tracing the outlines of a world too large for both of them. He stood, turning away, as if afraid of what he might see reflected in her eyes. "They'll come for me," he said. "The board, the feds, maybe worse. But at least this time, they'll be right." She wanted to hate him. She tried. But all she could see was the man who finally stopped running from the truth. "You think redemption means losing everything?" she asked. He turned back, slow, deliberate. "No," he said quietly. "It means finally earning the right to start over." The city thundered in the distance, a low, trembling echo that rolled through the glass and into her chest. She stepped forward, her voice barely above the sound of the storm. "And what if I don't want to start over alone?" For a moment, something flickered between them, unspoken, dangerous, fragile. He didn't move closer, but the air did. It carried the weight of what could have been and what still might be. He looked at her like a man seeing sunrise after a lifetime underground. "Maya," he said, her name heavy with everything he couldn't say. "If you stay, you'll be in the crossfire." She shook her head. "Maybe that's where the truth lives anyway." He smiled, a small, broken thing that somehow held hope. "Then I guess this is the offer I never made." The screens behind him lit up, news headlines already breaking, chaos blooming like wildfire. But in the space between them, there was stillness. Not the stillness of fear, the stillness of two people who had already lost everything that didn't matter, and were just now learning what did. Outside, dawn began to rise over the city, washing gold over the glass towers that had once symbolized his empire. Now, they stood as monuments to something else. The cost of redemption, and the quiet, trembling grace of a man who finally chose to be human. The morning broke like judgment, cold, clear, and merciless. Rain had stopped, but the streets still shimmered, slick with reflections of flashing lights and restless cameras. Police cars lined the curb outside Hale Dynamics' glass monolith. The empire Lucas Hale had built with ambition and deceit now collapsing beneath the weight of his confession. The world was watching, and for once, he didn't hide from it. Reporters shouted his name as he stepped out of the revolving doors, flanked by 2 federal agents. His suit was still immaculate, but his wrists, bound in steel, betrayed the truth no headline could twist. The crowd roared questions he didn't answer. Every flash of a camera was a small explosion, a reminder that the fall of a titan always draws a crowd. Across the street, Maya stood silent. She hadn't slept, not after the night they'd burned the truth into the world. Her hands were still cold from holding his confession drive, still shaking from the moment he'd looked at her and said, "If this destroys me, let it." Now, as he walked toward the waiting car, their eyes met across the barricade. A connection threaded through chaos, wordless and burning. He paused, long enough for the agents to hesitate. His voice carried low through the noise, not meant for anyone else but her. "I'll serve my time," he said, steady, as though it were the first honest sentence of his life. But I won't forget the woman who reminded me what truth feels like. The wind tugged at her coat, carrying his words away, scattering them into the hum of cameras and rain. She wanted to speak, to reach across the impossible distance between them, but there was nothing left to save. Only what had been found, and what would be lost. She took a step closer to the barricade, her voice barely audible. Then don't come back as a lie. For a moment, he stopped breathing. The meaning struck harder than any sentence a judge could hand down. Freedom wasn't what he'd lost, it was what he'd finally understood. To come back, he'd have to return as someone stripped of the mask, someone who'd buried the man he used to be. He nodded once, slow, deliberate, as if sealing a vow he couldn't take back. Then he turned away. The agents guided him into the car, doors closing with a hollow, final click. The convoy rolled out, engines humming like a dirge, leaving behind the ghost of everything they'd broken and the fragile thing they'd built between the ruins. Maya stayed until the crowd thinned and the headlines began to shift from outrage to fascination. Billionaire CEO turns himself in. Hale Dynamics scandal exposes decade of corruption. None of them would write about the quiet courage it took to tell the truth, or the woman who'd forced him to face it. She turned her gaze toward the skyline, the city they'd both tried to control in different ways. It glinted beneath the morning light, indifferent and eternal. Yet somewhere within its glass and steel, the world felt just a little more honest. In her pocket, the Foundation's confirmation document was folded neatly. His signature sat at the bottom, sharp, decisive. A promise, written not for power, but for penance. For the first time in years, she exhaled without shaking. He had chosen truth over survival, love over empire, and though it had cost him everything, it had given her something she never expected: peace. The sirens faded, the street emptied, and in that rare, quiet hour between endings and beginnings, Maya whispered to the wind, "Be free, Lucas." He was gone, but the echo of his choice lingered, an unfinished sentence, a story rewritten in the language of redemption. The months passed in quiet fragments, days that bled into one another, nights that felt longer than they should. Maya no longer worked at the café. The bell over the door still chimed when customers entered, but the rhythm of that life had ended for her the night Lucas Hale walked into it. She lived small now. A modest apartment above a bookstore, walls lined with second-hand novels and notes she never sent. The world had moved on from the scandal, new headlines, new villains, but some stories don't fade just because people stop reading them. They live quietly, pulsing beneath the surface, waiting for their echo. Every morning she made coffee the same way he used to order it: black, no sugar, no cream, a strange habit she couldn't shake. She'd take one sip, grimace at the bitterness, and set it aside. It was her only indulgence in memory, a reminder that truth, like coffee, wasn't meant to be sweet. Then, one rain-soaked afternoon, it came. A letter, no return address, the paper thick, expensive, the handwriting sharp and unmistakable. She froze when she saw it, her breath catching between disbelief and hope. Months had gone by since the trial. The news had said he'd taken a plea deal, vanished into a low-security facility upstate. No contact, no word, until now. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. Inside, just one sheet, one line, written in clean ink. The coffee's still black, but I've learned to taste the bitterness. No signature, none was needed. Her throat tightened, the words blurring as she read them again. It wasn't a love letter. It was a confession. One final truth wrapped in restraint. The kind only a man who had lost everything could write. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't promising return. He was saying, "I remember," saying, "I understand now." Maya folded the letter carefully, as if it might dissolve beneath her touch. She placed it in the drawer beside the small photograph of her brother, the one thing she hadn't moved. The same brother who'd died trying to expose the empire Lucas built on deceit. And now, somehow, that same man had used his own destruction to finish what her brother began. The irony was brutal, the beauty of it unbearable. She walked to the window, the city shimmering beneath the drizzle. Somewhere beyond the skyline he existed, not as a billionaire, not as a myth, but as a man paying his dues. Maybe redemption didn't need to shout. Maybe it simply whispered, "I've changed." Her reflection in the glass looked older, steadier. She smiled faintly and whispered to the letter, "Good. Maybe now we can both live." The rain thickened, tracing silver veins down the window pane. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, soft and low, as if the world itself was exhaling. She turned off the lights and sat in silence, the sound of the storm her only company. The letter lay folded beside her, its weight far heavier than its words. Some stories don't end with justice or love. Some end with understanding, the kind that arrives too late but still arrives. And somewhere, behind barbed wire and gray walls, a man who once thought power was everything now woke each day to the sound of metal doors and the taste of coffee that wasn't sweet but real. And for the first time, that was enough. Would you have trusted the billionaire or exposed him? Subscribe to True Crime Archives, where every story hides a secret worth uncovering.